Drinks in the US are made by American workers in American factories, largely all with American inputs, and the same would be true if you took
Coke cans could be harder to find as U.S. tariffs on aluminum may soon take effect.
In the first quarter of 2025, Coca-Cola, a brand that has long stood as a symbol of American culture and business success, reported something few thought possible: a sharp 18% increase in U.S. production costs compared to the previous year. What's behind it? A mix of new tariffs on imported materials, like aluminum and refined sugar, combined with higher shipping and supply chain expenses brought on by policy changes. The result: for the first time in nearly 140 years, Coca-Cola announced plans to move part of its operations outside the United States. The images coming out of this shift tell a story no earnings call could. Inside a Coca-Cola bottling facility, the production line is silent. Bottles that once moved in a steady rhythm now sit motionless. Flashing warning lights replace the sound of business as usual. Outside the company's historic Georgia plant, workers are seen taking down the Coca-Cola sign, a gesture that feels more like a farewell than routine maintenance. This isn't just a corporate restructuring. It's a wake-up call. When even Coca-Cola, perhaps the most American company in the world, can't afford to operate within U.S. borders, the issue is bigger than just rising costs. It reflects a deeper shift, a moment where the identity of American industry itself feels uncertain. For more than 100 years, Coca-Cola hasn't just been a drink, it's been a global symbol of American identity. From street vendors in Vietnam to grocery aisles in Brazil, the red and white label meant more than soda. It meant America was there through commerce culture and soft power. At home, Coca-Cola felt untouchable. It was part of daily life, a massive employer, and a brand woven into the fabric of the country. But that image is starting to fade. In a move that surprised many, Coca-Cola confirmed that it's considering shifting a large part of its U.S. production overseas. The reason: costs in the U.S. have become too high, especially after new trade policies and tariffs raised the price of doing business. The company hasn't said whether its headquarters might also move, but just the idea of Coca-Cola walking away from its American roots is enough to send a message. Even a brand built on American soil can't survive here without basic economic sense. The reaction was immediate and emotional. In places like Georgia and Ohio, where generations have worked in Coca-Cola plants, the news felt like betrayal. Some workers said they were shocked and heartbroken. Online consumers asked the question that's been echoing ever since: if even Coca-Cola can't survive in America, who can? And really, it's more than just frustration, it's fear. Fear that something deep is slipping away, not just in the economy, but in what it means to be American. Because this isn't only about Coca-Cola, it's part of a bigger shift, one that's affecting major U.S. brands across every industry. Companies are being forced to reconsider where and how they make their products. And when those decisions point them away from the U.S., the country is left to ask hard questions about whether its trade strategies are doing more harm than good and who exactly they're helping. This turning point didn't happen overnight. It began with a revival of aggressive tariff policies in 2024, when the Trump administration brought back import taxes on materials like aluminum, processed sugar, and packaging supplies. The goal was to protect U.S. industries and rebuild supply chains at home. But for global companies like Coca-Cola, which rely on materials from around the world, the impact was immediate and painful. Take aluminum, for example. Coca-Cola depends heavily on imported aluminum to make the cans that carry its drinks to every corner of the globe. When tariffs pushed the price of that metal higher, it became one more cost the company had to absorb on top of already rising expenses for sugar packaging and shipping. But unlike luxury brands that can raise prices and stay afloat, Coca-Cola operates on tight margins and massive volume. It can't simply pass the cost to customers and hope they'll stick around. That's why executives at Coca-Cola have been so blunt. In public statements and leaked internal memos, they've said clearly this path is unsustainable. The company can't keep eating costs and expect to stay competitive. If it raises prices too high, especially in price-sensitive markets like Southeast Asia or Latin America, it risks losing market share to local competitors who don't have to deal with U.S. tariffs. And this isn't just about dollars and cents, it's about a deeper clash between politics and business reality. Tariffs may sound like a strong move to defend American jobs, but they often ignore how deeply connected global supply chains have become. For multinationals like Coca-Cola, those connections aren't optional, they're essential. So when staying in the U.S. means falling behind globally, the choice becomes clear and painful. Coca-Cola isn't making this decision in isolation. Across the board, other big American and global companies are watching closely, and many are already doing the same. This isn't just about one soda company tightening its belt. It may be the start of a much larger shift as more corporations rethink whether the U.S. is still a cost-effective place to make things. Companies like Ford, Apple, and Whirlpool have all raised alarms about rising production costs caused by tariffs. Some of them have already moved parts of their operations overseas to protect their profits. Smaller businesses, the ones that can't just pack up and leave, are in a much tougher spot. They're stuck choosing between taking a hit to their bottom line or raising prices and hoping customers won't walk away. Either way, it's a lose-lose. But Coca-Cola's story hits differently. This is a brand with emotional weight. It's deeply tied to American identity. If even Coke, with its century-long legacy and roots in cities like Atlanta, can't justify staying in the U.S., what does that say to other companies? It sends a chilling message. Patriotism doesn't pay the bills. When the math stops working, even loyalty has limits. And here's the twist. The very policies meant to protect American industry might be doing the opposite. Instead of reviving manufacturing, they're pushing companies to leave, taking jobs and investment with them. In places like Georgia, Ohio, and parts of the Midwest, where many people supported these protectionist trade moves, workers are now seeing the results firsthand. Plants aren't reopening. They're shutting down. The real question isn't whether more companies will follow Coca-Cola's lead. It's how many will and how long political leaders can ignore the fallout. At what point do we stop and ask, are these policies actually helping American workers, or are they pushing the economy in the wrong direction? Coca-Cola's decision to pull part of its production out of the U.S. has stirred up more than just economic concerns. It's reopened a deeper, more emotional debate. What does it mean for a company to be loyal to its country? And how much does that loyalty really matter in today's economy? For generations, we expected American companies not just to make money, but to represent American values. Made in the USA wasn't just a label. It was a kind of promise. But in a world driven by global supply chains and shareholder pressure, that promise is getting harder to keep. To be clear, Coca-Cola isn't abandoning the U.S. completely, but its message is unmistakable. Patriotism doesn't pay the bills. When trade policies drive up costs and erode competitiveness, even the most iconic brands have to make hard choices. Some call it betrayal. Others, especially company leaders and shareholders, see it as basic financial responsibility. But to workers on the ground, it just feels like history repeating itself. Another promise, broken, another community left behind. There's a growing gap between political slogans and business reality. On one side, politicians call for Buy American push for reshoring jobs and talk tough on companies that move operations overseas. On the other side is the messy truth, a global economy where companies can't just serve one flag, one workforce, or one country's agenda. Coca-Cola's situation shows just how outdated some of our old assumptions have become. In Washington, the divide is clear. Some lawmakers defend tariffs as a way to protect American jobs. Others say these same policies are hurting U.S. companies and consumers. President Biden is under fire for not offering a strong industrial strategy to cushion the impact, while former President Trump's trade policies are seen by many as overly aggressive and politically motivated. Meanwhile, the people caught in the middle, workers, suppliers, and everyday consumers, aren't debating ideology. They're just feeling the consequences: job losses, higher prices, and a growing sense of being overlooked. And that's where the real question lies. If companies no longer feel loyal to the country, should the country keep supporting policies that are driving them away? It's not just about trade. It's about trust and who's left to carry the cost when it breaks. The Coca-Cola story is no longer just about one company or one industry. It's a case study in what happens when economic nationalism collides with financial reality. Tariffs may rally political support, but they don't erase balance sheets. And for many corporations, the numbers are unforgiving. When cost structures shift too far, loyalty becomes a luxury few can afford. The final cost is measured not only in jobs lost or facilities closed, but in the erosion of trust between business and government, between companies and their workers, and between voters and the promises made to them. Coca-Cola's decision exposes the limits of a country-first approach that lacks coordination, long-term planning, or incentives strong enough to truly anchor global firms on U.S. soil. It also calls into question the sustainability of using tariffs as a blunt instrument. Short-term political gains may come at the expense of long-term industrial stability. For every factory temporarily revived by trade protection, others quietly relocate or downsize. And as multinational firms move toward more agile, borderless strategies, they may increasingly view political unpredictability in the U.S. as a business risk. The deeper irony is that these policies were meant to protect American industry, yet they may be pushing it further away. When even Coca-Cola signals it might no longer call America its production home, it's not just a warning, it's a reckoning. If Coca-Cola, one of the most American brands in history, is rethinking its place in America, the message is clear. Loyalty without logic is not a strategy. This isn't about left or right. It's about facing the cost of economic decisions that ignore complexity. The future of U.S. industry won't be saved by slogans. It will be built with policy planning and the willingness to compete, not retreat. It's time to demand more than protection. It's time to demand a plan.